Perhaps one of the most hotly debated questions within Anglicanism is over the question of Anglican identity. On the one hand, you have the Reformed side that claims that Anglicanism is thoroughly reformed in line with the Westminster Confession and others like it. On the other side, you have the Anglo-Catholics that want to almost bypass the Reformed heritage and go straight back to the patristic era and claim that the Anglican Church is simply a third branch of ancient Catholic Christianity. So which is it? Is there room to disagree within Anglicanism? Do we have to pick one or the other? And are these two positions incompatible with one another to such a degree that they can't even be called of the same faith? Now, that last part may seem a little bit extreme, but in many conversations that I've had with those who are very Reformed, they do look with a kind of animosity towards the Anglo-Catholics as not representing true Anglicanism. They accuse them of historical revisionism and things like that. And the Anglo-Catholics look poorly oftentimes on the Reformed. And they do this because in their mind, the Reformed are emphasizing the Protestant part of Anglicanism at the expense of its greater Catholic heritage. These two positions at times seem to be irreconcilable. And when you then kind of take the big picture of the ACNA and you look that within there's also kind of an evangelical, Baptistically Pentecostal crowd, no vestments, contemporary music, very little liturgics. And you have to ask the question, what is Anglicanism? What are the fundamentals of Anglicanism? And can we, all operating within different spheres of quote-unquote Anglicanism, exist this way? Or do we need to change? When it comes to defining Anglican identity, one of the things that I want us to be careful of, and one of the things that I need to caution myself in going beyond what is right and good, is by defining Anglicanism so narrowly that you do end up cutting out brothers and sisters in Christ. On the other side, if we make Anglicanism too broad, it's reduced to absolutely nothing, and it means absolutely nothing. When you talk to the Reformed side of things, they oftentimes want to define Anglicanism by its formularies, the 39 Articles, the Book of Homilies, the Ordinal, Book of Common Prayer. The Anglo-Catholics would rather define it by its patristic heritage, the Nicene Creed, the 7 ecumenical councils, things like that. So we have to ask the question, is this irreconcilable? And one of the things that I want to emphasize, and this is not going to be a perfect solution, it really isn't. This is a problem, and we need to have discussions about it. But one of the things I want to point out is that the Book of Common Prayer, the liturgy of the Book of Common Prayer, the Mass of the Book of Common Prayer, has been the historic liturgical expression of the English Church. And this historic expression has made its way through both low church settings as well as high church settings. You'll notice that at the very beginning of the Reformed Episcopal Church, it was a very low church, kind of evangelical, and they were pushing back against a lot of the very extreme high church Anglo-Catholic expressions of the day. And yet the common thread between both of them was that they used the Book of Common Prayer. The splitting and the frustration came based on how you express that liturgy, but there was a commonality in the shared liturgy, and this has been fundamental to Anglicanism. And so as somebody who desires to see Anglicans unite and desires to see them unite around a common center, I want to propose and argue that the Book of Common Prayer should be that anchor, that definer of Orthodox Anglicanism. I think that we should depart from using liturgies that are not the Book of Common Prayer. Anglo-Catholics who use the Missal, I would caution that. I would caution excessive use of the Missal. And my argument would be, at that point, you're moving into territory that is not historically Anglican, and that a lot of other Anglicans cannot and will not agree to. The Book of Common Prayer seems to me an ecumenical point of agreement between Anglicans. And so if a low church Anglican can use the Book of Common Prayer, its liturgy, its ordinal, and a high church Anglo-Catholic can use the Book of Common Prayer, its liturgy, its ordinal, then we actually have a point of contact, a point of meeting, and we can then exist within the same communion. The other thing I want to say on this point is the beautiful thing about some of the diversity. I agree that there are limits to the amount of diversity that should exist within a communion. But one of the benefits about a diverse expression of the liturgy is that it's an opportunity for us to learn from one another, right? Me as an Anglo-Catholic, I like the smells and bells. Give me incense, give me vestments, give me lace, give me everything, right? Give me icons, the whole thing. But when I go to a lower church expression that might be more evangelical in character, the liturgy is the same. So I'm worshiping in a familiar pattern, but I'm able to enter into a little bit of a different way of expressing it and learn from that. And my hope for us is that we would have eyes and ears willing to listen, willing to see, willing to learn. And that in turn, a low church evangelical or a reformed Anglican would be able to step into a high church Anglo-Catholic context and hear the same liturgy, experience the same liturgy, fall into the same pattern of worship, but in a little bit different expression that perhaps he can learn from. He can take back to his congregation. You see, I think we sometimes think that unity equals uniformity. And I think we need to move away from that because that has never historically been so in the church. All the way from the very beginning, there has been different expressions based on different contexts, different cultures, even different ways in which the faith itself was delivered, right? And so because of this, there is going to be a difference in expression across Anglican churches, depending on the region, depending on the context. But one of the beautiful things is if we can root ourselves in the Book of Common Prayer as kind of being the central feature of what makes Anglicanism distinct from other Catholic traditions, I think that'll be a great way to have unity, more unity, not uniformity, but more unity within the Anglican communion. And it would also send a message to all the other churches that are looking in that we may want to have dialogue with what Anglicanism is. Because if they look in and they see Anglo-Catholics using the Missal, they see low church evangelical Anglicans skimping on what they're using for the Book of Common Prayer, then there's no semblance of liturgical union within the Anglican communion. But if churches looking in can see all Anglicans using the same liturgy, expressing it a little bit different, but using the same liturgy, that is going to go a long way in helping us to become more unified. And so let's try to stop fighting so much, and let's try to find our identity ultimately, obviously, in Christ, but in our common liturgical heritage in the Book of Common Prayer. And let's prioritize that as being definitional to Anglicanism.